We are here at the home of New Hampshire State Senator Jeanne Forrester, who just had an event. And Ovide Lamontagne, I want to say thank you very much for taking a few minutes with GraniteGrok.
Well, Skip, it's great to be with you. Thanks for coming out tonight to this beautiful home in Meredith with a great turnout of people from the Lakes region and beyond. It was really a very nice night for us.
Now, you covered a lot of topics tonight.
Yes.
And a number of questions. As always, we'll be putting it up at GraniteGrok over the next few days.
Okay.
But I had a couple of questions for you. You talked about a moratorium on regulations. Let's start off with that.
Right.
And doing a cost analysis or forcing the agencies to do that.
Yeah.
Is there anything specific that you were looking for?
I'm looking for impact on businesses and families and municipalities for the cost of new regulations. You know, compliance with regulations is a huge cost driver for businesses, and it's also very expensive for municipalities and political subdivisions of the state. And the state ought to do a cost-benefit analysis when it comes to promulgating new rules and regulations. We really don't do a good job at that at all. And we need to consult with the business community to find out what's it going to cost to comply with the latest building standards or environmental standards to conduct business in New Hampshire. And that's really what the Economic Impact Analysis Initiative will be about.
Along with the regulations, as an elected budget committee member in the town of Guilford, one of the things I brought up this past season was the idea of unfunded mandates,
right,
of which there are quite a few. Now, will that be part of any kind of analysis that you have the state agencies do?
Well, I certainly would like to look at that from the perspective, again, of this economic impact analysis when the state promulgates rules that affects municipalities. Municipalities are employers. Sometimes the rules affect them. They also operate buildings, public buildings. And so we need to look at the costs, unintended and intended, to municipalities on their budgets. I don't believe in unfunded mandates. I think the state has an obligation, if it's going to require a compliance or certain requirements to be met, that the costs be borne or offset by some of the cost savings. And I think we need to do that. And that forces the people who are promulgating rules and regulations to really evaluate whether or not this is something necessary or necessary enough that we need to impose this burden. And if we do, then we need to pay for it.
And one of the things that I know you well for having covered you, and also for full disclosure, GraniteGrok endorsed you during the senatorial run that you had.
Yes, it did, and I was grateful for that.
Was the emphasis on the Constitution, both
Yes.
the U.S. and the New Hampshire one.
Right.
Now, the New Hampshire Constitution has one particular clause that says the state cannot promulgate unfunded mandates.
Right.
And that's the reason why I'm asking that question. So if you do find stuff that has been put into regulation or by statute, as governor, aren't you supposed to say you can't do that anymore?
Well, it's 28A is prospective. Of course, things in the past that have been unfunded mandates can continue on. But yes, if there's a law or regulation that's enacted when I'm the governor, if I'm the governor, then there needs to be an accountability to the municipalities and to the political subdivisions of the state as to whether or not this is passing on new costs or not. And that's something that we need to take seriously, because that's a constitutional mandate adopted by the people. The Constitution of New Hampshire is a great document. It's the People's Compact with their state government, and we need to be faithful to it. And it limits the power of government. It's not a living document either.
And that, I think, is going to be one of the things that comes up. Certainly on the Republican side, the Constitutions, as I just mentioned, was a big deal. But you never hear that from the Democrat side.
Right.
And we are seeing people who I would consider to be on the progressive wing of the Democrat Party, those who either view it as a living document or just say it's just an old piece of paper, we don't have to worry about that. Where instead of government protecting our rights, they see it as an entity that provides positive rights. It's the government that has to give you stuff. And already we hear from Jackie Silly, we already hear from Maggie Hassan, and there'll be some more coming through as well. These ugly, nasty Republicans, look what they've done this past session, that they're taking things away. We're going to give you things. How will you combat that as one, either running in the general election or spill over into the primary? Because they are going to make those comments. They are going to hurl those charges.
Yes.
What's your response?
Well, I think people in New Hampshire are more sophisticated than that, and it's important to educate. I mean, campaigns are about generating support for a particular position and direction. There's no question that New Hampshire citizens, along with citizens across the country, are looking for government to live within its means, to be as responsible with its budget, with its revenues, as a family would be with a family budget. And to understand that you can't keep asking more of government unless there's a price that you're willing to pay for it. And I think that right now we're in a state in New Hampshire where people expect the state government to be responsible, limited, to live within the four corners of the state constitution, and that to leave it for the municipalities and families and businesses and our communities to take care of the needs that are best met there. Local control is about making sure the right governmental function is performed by the right governmental entity. It's not often the state, it's more often the municipalities, and that's where these functions should be taking place. So that's the approach. It's pandering, I think, to simply say we're going to promise you this and give you that and continue to grow government, especially when it's not yours to grow. Government service is public service, and that means doing what the public asks you to do, not what you think you need to do to hold office. I'm not interested in holding office. I'm interested in making a difference, and that's what I'll do as governor.
You've been very consistent since I've known you in this run, and again, you said it today, is that the power should be devolved back to the people.
Absolutely.
And back to the local governments. And here, the local governments are mere subdivisions of the state. But yet we see Speaker Bill O'Brien and his leadership team, I flat out asked him, is this what you're trying to do, is to devolve power out of Concord? And his answer was yes. Again, you said it tonight. That is part of your role. Do you have any concrete examples rather than glittering generalities? Not that you spoke in general glitter. Gosh, it's getting late, Ovid, and I'm sorry for stumbling over my words. But glittering generalities. Are there some specific things that you could tell the folks that are going to be watching this on GraniteGrok? Here's a good example of something that should be better handled at the local level versus in Concord.
Yes, well, I think in education, for example, right now the status quo in education is that the Supreme Court has said the state cannot delegate educational policy or educational funding when it comes to an adequate education. Constitutional amendment language is being debated around in the legislature now, and that actually is supported by the governor, at least one version, is much better than leaving the status quo the way it is. And that will devolve power to the municipalities, to local, and restore local control over education. I know there are some on the conservative movement who do not accept this, but we need to talk honestly about the way our system of government is structured and what the Claremont decisions have said about that, which are wrong and need to be fixed. We don't have local control right now of education, frankly, under this existing legislative and judicial paradigm. The court has interpreted the Constitution in a way that I don't think is correct, and so therefore we need to acknowledge that it needs to be amended. We can't just ignore the court, and we need to empower the legislature to do what it's supposed to do in our system of government, which is to devolve power, delegate power to the local communities, the school districts, to operate the schools. And unless we have that constitutional amendment, the law of the land in New Hampshire today is the state has to run everything, can't delegate power to set educational policy or fund education to the local level. And I say the state should be doing that. The state should set high standards for a paradigm, or at least aspirational standards we need to achieve. We need to know what students are going to learn when they get that New Hampshire diploma, but the means and method of educating children should be left to the local level, including school choice initiatives, homeschooling. It should be an option for families, how to educate their children. And I think that's what these amendments will do. One of these amendments will do if it's adopted. This is a very serious issue for New Hampshire. It's 20 years in the making. I've been involved with this battle for 20 years, and I think we're getting very close to a point where we might actually be able to fix this problem.
Education, I know is something that you talked about at length during your talk this evening. We're talking about it yet again. But yet it serves a general purpose of what is the proper role of government, and also the co-located question, if you would, of which level of government should be doing which.
Right.
And you said something that I was not aware of tonight. So there's a couple of things I learned tonight.
Okay.
Even though I've been interviewing you and videoing you for a while.
Yeah.
When you talked about the Department of Education here in the state,
yes.
that it seemed like most of the positions are federally funded.
Correct.
That somewhere along the line, somebody said, oh, we'll take these dollars, even if it means strings attached.
Yeah.
And certainly in the blogosphere, because our counterpart on the progressive side is Blue Hampshire, and there's a blogger by the name of Dean Barker who has put up something that he's supporting Jackie Silly, and he ran down a whole list of things, and each and every one of those things, to which I will be replying, is power goes back to Concord. Power should rely in D.C. Concord should be in charge of the politicians, and it always seems to be a case that, well, the politicians at the next level up are the gods of government versus the people. So what do you say to these people when they say, we should be taking that money regardless of the strings because we're going to be able to do great things with it?
Well, the strings should never be attached from Washington. Washington doesn't know better how to teach our children. We do, working with New Hampshire families, faculty members, teachers, and the principals to develop the best educational program. But the example I used tonight is one that hits home with a lot of people. When I was chairman of the State Board of Education, I proposed to our Commissioner of Education that our state employees in the Department of Education should be deputized to go out into the school districts that need the help the most, to help with curriculum development, teacher training, coming up with new strategies for teaching kids. And she looked at me and said, are you kidding? The State Department of Education is a federal outpost. And I was shocked that she said that. She said most of the positions in the department are funded in whole or in part by federal programs, which means those employees are actually doing the federal government's work in New Hampshire. And that is not the way this Constitution of ours in the United States was designed. It wasn't designed to have the federal government overseeing elementary and secondary education. It's designed to let the state take care of that, working with the people. Now, New Hampshire has a different model of governance than other states. We are not a home rule state. And this is a very important point, Skip. The only power that a local municipality, school district, political subdivision has is that's delegated to it by the state government. All municipalities, subdivisions of the state, are subdivisions of the state. They derive their very existence from the enactment of a state law. That's our system of government. It is top down in that way. But that doesn't mean there can't be local control. There can be local control. That the state actually delegates a lot of authority to municipalities and school districts to do what is so fundamental. That's to educate our children. With the help of parents locally, teachers who are recruited to work in those schools locally, and school leaders like principals. And this is working with taxpayers groups and parents. That is where the enterprise should take place, and that is local control, and that is where you put your faith in the people and not in government structures, particularly removed from the site of the delivery of those services. The same thing applies in healthcare. Why is it that people feel that Washington knows best how to help take care of us when it comes to healthcare? The system of ours in New Hampshire was developed by the people. We recruited doctors and built hospitals in the various communities of our state, not because Washington compelled it or even Concord compelled it, but because the people in those communities recruited doctors and created hospitals, whether it's in Dover or in Keene or in Hanover. We have a great medical school there with a wonderful medical center. But that was placed there because the people there and the college worked with the local community to develop that particular facility, not because Washington put it there. Let's have faith in ourselves. Let's have faith in our institutions here in New Hampshire. And let's set ourselves apart from what is really the national decline that's allowed by more and more strings in Washington, whether it's education, healthcare, or business regulations.
GrokTV.